Hello ratbags, my name is Jade. Welcome to the survival games that are still hopefully going to be releasing this year. I've covered survival games for 6 years nearly now, and I've played every single one under the sun, or so it feels like. There's so many games that have release dates and then they obviously get pushed back. But as we're now in October, it's coming up to only a few months left. What can you look forward to if you're a survival fan? Because this last year has affected game development in so many different ways with the COVID situation, so many games have been pushed back, so do maybe expect a lot of console games to be appearing in 2022. It has been pretty light and pretty bad if you're a console survival fan this year, whereas last year was probably one of the best years ever. In terms of PC games, it's still affecting PC development too. There are lots of smaller indie games maybe coming up with approaches, but maybe not the biggest and best survival games you come to expect, other than Sons of the Forest, which I'm sure is the most hyped survival game of all. I've already started working on my 2022 survival games you need to know about, so make sure you check out that video in a couple of weeks too, and let me know if there's any games I've missed that you really think are pretty interesting. I'll put timestamps there if you want to skip ahead or just have a quick peruse, but do hopefully listen out for a big selection in survival, single player, multiplayer, as well as a whole host of little indie ones. Let's go. One of the more unusual survival games, definitely holding out against the hordes of hundreds, maybe even thousands of bugs as they attack your base. You'll need to find resources to build up your defences, using your mech suit to find more resources, exotic materials to upgrade your base defence, as well as your factory settings to gather even more components. With an emphasis on huge combat against hundreds of enemies on screen at once, Riftbreaker is looking very special. It's been around a good few years now, lots of demos have come out over that time, and it's looking like polish has been applied to this game massively. It will be available on all platforms, Xbox, PlayStation and PC, but even better, if you're an Xbox Games Pass owner, you will be able to play this on day one for free. Another fairly unique feature of Riftbreaker is that it's going to have streamer stuff baked in it. So if you're streaming, you can set up votes and polls to increase the amount of enemies, and viewers can go ahead and make life a bit easier or a bit harder for you. Craft bigger and better weapons to take on bigger and badder enemies in this base defense action survival game. Breakwaters is a procedurally generated sandbox world that you can explore lots of oceans as well as fight off massive titans. It's a survival game with RPG mechanics that heavily interact with the water. You're going to be manipulating it to create pathways through puzzles, as well as the usual survival tropes, farming, base building and taking on pirates. It is going to be a co-op game that you can play with friends, and it takes heavy influence from games like Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing and more typical survival games. You'll meet NPCs, you'll gather new items and resources to craft better weapons and tools, as well as get yourself different modes of transport, including lots of ships as well as air gliders. Scheduled to come out right now in October, sometime this month. It looks like it will be hitting early access on Steam. It had a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and they are promising to release it on console in the future too. What do you get if you mix a survival game but the opposite of Subnautica? Maybe something along the lines of Starsand. You'll be running across desert environments, solving mysteries while surviving against all sort of crustacean style monsters. Don't worry though, you won't always be running away from them. Looks like by the time you do manage to find yourself a place to defend it with, you can also set up traps that can stop the enemies from getting too close to you, as well as the usual foraging for weapons, new items and resources. And just like most real life deserts, it can get a bit cold at night time, so you're going to have to make sure that your base is fully prepared for all sorts of weather conditions. Single player only, it's going to be available in early access on November the 4th, and hopefully offers a blend of puzzle and elements of combat with that base building and survival stuff you come to expect. The devs have just announced there will be some sort of demo in the early days of October, so I'm looking forward to trying this one out ahead of its release, and for sure I'll let you guys know what it's like when it hits Steam on November the 4th. Lens Island's going to be a single player game that comes out on the 5th November, offering combat, exploration, farming as well as base building in a top-down viewpoint, giving this survival game a little bit of a difference from some of the others. You'll be exploring dense and dark dungeons, fighting off against Stranger Things style enemies, gathering loot, getting more resources and upgrading your weapons via traders that you can buy stuff from. You'll also be able to build up your base over time and create beautiful surroundings with gardens and farming. There'll be various different ways you can mix up the combat options with different loadouts, different weapons and different styles. I've tried this on the channel, I thought it was pretty decent. It has a bunch of demos that it's had over the last year, so definitely looking forward to this full release game, not early access, on November the 5th on Steam. Icarus, a co-op survival based game where you will be landing on the planet of Icarus and gathering resources, hoping to make it off the planet before terrible storms mean that you will be lost forever. You have to use the simple mechanics of food and water to keep yourself alive, as well as a whole host of threats from wildlife and creatures. But the biggest threat mainly is the weather systems. Huge storms can rage across, whether they're snowstorms, sandstorms, and a lot more, with diverse biomes that you'll be able to explore. They've been running beta tests that you can access just by pre-ordering the game, with these beta weekends running every 2 weeks up until its release, which has just changed once more to December the 4th. The session-based gameplay is very unique for the survival genre, and it remains to be seen whether or not cozy farmers will really appreciate their bases maybe being destroyed every time they leave one of the prospects. The game visually is stunning, but you may need a higher, decent system to really run it very well. Full release in December. As I mentioned at the start of the video, console pickings are pretty light, but there are some little games coming out that may be of interest. Aftermath: The Last Stand got announced recently as having a console release, and it does look likely it's going to be releasing before the end of 2021 on Xbox, PlayStation and PC. It's kind of a action RPG kind of version of Project Zomboid, as you run around facing off zombies, gathering fuel and lots of other resources and upgrading. You are going to die. No, maybe not as much as Dark Souls, but certainly you're going to have to learn from your mistakes as you gain new abilities, new perks to hopefully make the next one a bit longer. NPCs, different style loadouts and much more, facing off against a horde of different types of enemies. It may be a quick throwaway style game, or you may absolutely love the nature of the roguelike survival elements in it and stick with it for ages and ages, becoming a master of the zombie run. Predicting a December or late November release. Frozen Flame looks to be more akin to an MMO with lots of survival mechanics in it. So you're going to have online PvP, online co-op, base building, lots of quests and a vast world to explore with unique biomes. It's been in beta for nearly a year and a half in various different stages, and looks like they're coming to the end and closing stages with a release date planned of simply before the end of 2021. The ultimate aim of the game is to get enough power, increase your character's level, get the best gear and weapons before taking on the Citadel and overcoming the Frozen Flame and stopping a curse from spreading across the land. That said, if you just want to mess around, go and compete with other players, take over and do lots of damage, then you can also go and do that too. It does look like they will be separating PvP and PvP, so don't worry if you're a Care Bear. The RPG mechanics are definitely here in this game in terms of skills and abilities that you can increase over time, choosing what you want to hone in on. And it will be hitting early access release once it does happen, and I'm predicting at some point maybe in November or December. Myth of Empires is trying to maybe be a little bit of competition for New World. It's a survival MMO where you will be able to choose to play on PvP or PvE style servers, but also have battles and wars organised with other players. Very unique, different take on the survival genre, but consisting of the same tropes. You will be able to free base build all sorts of different ways, and they're adding a whole bunch of PvP options, particularly to do with siege combat. Horses are a big commodity in this game. You'll be able to rear and raise them and settle yourself as a trader. If you want to be someone that focuses on weapon making and crafting, you can also do that too, with a unique blend of almost mount and blade mechanics. On top of that, they've also got a bunch of mechanics around NPC characters that you can actually invite or take against their will back to your farm and make them work, or simply use them as cannon fodder and come with you in combat. There's a whole host of skills, levels, attributes that you're going to have to earn as you play through the game and unlock brand new abilities and items. It's more historically based rather than fantasy, but it does seem to be quite large in terms of how many people can have on the servers. They've been running closed beta tests all throughout the year, and it does look likely that the release will be before the end of 2021. A sprawling world with multiple servers that you can join in different parts and regions, with all sorts of biomes that you'd come to expect, like snowy, mountainous and forest. A more Asian influenced style, definitely looking out for this one in the future. Early access release on Steam coming soon. Little Devil Inside started life off as a Wii U game back in a day in 2014. That was its promise from its Kickstarter. Things have evolved obviously, and now it's going to be launching on PlayStation and PC as exclusives before hitting other consoles at some time afterwards. It's a more unique survival game based on a third-person style review and more session-based, where you go into smaller parts of worlds and try and basically become a monster hunter. That is the main focus as you find more information and try and discover clues about various different creatures in the world. It does have a combat system. You will be jumping on top of these creatures, but you'll be working out the best way to defeat them, taking your knowledge back to your professor who's in charge, and then going out on more missions. It looks varied, it looks fun, it's very colourful and quite unique with a slightly Studio Ghibli-esque feel. I'm definitely looking forward to this one. It was scheduled to come out in July, but July came and went without a single peep from developers about why it didn't actually hit its release, but it's still saying 2021 at this point, so we can only assume that it will maybe appear. A single player experience, as I said, exclusive only to PlayStation and PC. Let's hope it does eventually arrive, or at least we get some news if it is delayed until next year. One of the greatest survival games of all time, The Forest, that's a fact, go and check the Steam reviews, is having a sequel. Sons of the Forest got announced nearly 2 years ago, and things have been extremely quiet other than a few interviews granted to a YouTuber or so, and maybe just a couple news outlets. These developers from BC in Canada are very, very elusive, and so it will be maybe a bit more time before we actually get a release for this. That said, they've often left things to surprise, announcing brand new updates on the day they're coming out, so I wouldn't put it past them to maybe stealth launch this before the end of the year. And that's the only thing they committed to in some of their talks before, saying that the game hopefully would be out before the end of 2021. If you don't know what The Forest is, the basis of the game is surviving against a bunch of mutants as you try and progress through the island, finding the mysteries of certain caves as well as brand new laboratories added to the sequel. You'll be investigating one of the islands mentioned in the first game, continuing on the story, no spoilers here, as you kind of get to the bottom of why these mutants exist, who created them, and possibly just stay alive. It is going to have co-op, and it does look likely it's going to be entering into early access once more, taking on board players' feedback. No news about exactly where it's going to launch. It still doesn't have a Steam page, so it could potentially be arriving on Epic Games Store. It does look likely it will eventually hit PlayStations and other consoles possibly in the future, but the devs have said that PC is their main focus. Time for some maybe bottom of the basement stuff at the moment, purely because there isn't a lot of gameplay or features known, but Tribe Primitive Builder could potentially be releasing before the end of the year. It does have an interesting premise, but not enough shown at the moment with the gameplay. They have been doing regular dev blogs though. It's promising to be a single player experience, much akin to other games like Stranded Deep, Green Hell, possibly even The Forest, as you explore, construct more elaborate buildings and make sure you've got the right workstations to keep your settlement live. I'm fully expecting them to say this game won't release until 2022, but at the moment 2021 is what they've said. Winter Survival Simulator. My god, who thinks of these names? It is a game that could potentially be coming out before the end of the year, and yes, you're going to be surviving in winter, and it is a simulation game, yes, and you will be surviving, so I guess maybe it's a little bit apt. Another single player experience where you pretty much have lost all your resources and equipment on a hike through some winter biome, and you have to hopefully make it back alive. Somewhat refreshing. You won't necessarily be able to kill bears and wolves just with your tiny little knife that you might have been able to find or craft. You're going to have to actually run away and plot their demise with lots of different style traps. Again, it's kind of got bargain basement written all over it, and potentially it looks like it could be released in 2022 instead, but I have got a free demo that you can go and try right now, so you might as well give it a shot and let me know what you think about it. If it does come out, I'm predicting a December release. And that at the moment is pretty much it. There are some other games that have listed 2021, but when I've checked out their dev blogs or recent activity, nothing's really been there for the last few months, so I haven't really included them. And unless I get any kind of word that something is maybe approaching its full release, I don't really want to include it in this list. Obviously some of these titles I'm sure will be delayed till next year. It's simply just what they've stated at the end of their trailers that we can only go by, and recent developments have suggested that it's on its way. Do let me know if there's a survival game releasing this year that looks decent and interesting. Pop it in the comment section down below and I'll check it out. And obviously look out for the big releases of 2022, the games that we'll all be playing or hoping will come to consoles in the future. My name is Jade. I'll see you rat bags for more guides, little news, tutorials and everything else to do with survival very soon. I'll see you later.